Hi there, good afternoon. Yeah, so I'm on the board of IX Denver. It's an all-volunteer board. We started the IX a little over a year ago, and part of our impetus in starting the IX was obviously to do internet exchange stuff, but also we're trying to kind of pave a path that others have worn before us and really set us an example. So the idea of this talk isn't really to toot our horn, but more to kind of provide all the things that we've done wrong so that others can come behind us and then hopefully have a little easier time of it. So I'm going to go through kind of the why, what, how, and who of building a community IX or a cooperative IX. So this is kind of the agenda of what we're going to go through here, and I'm going to go through it, and then hopefully we'll have some questions and then kind of dig into some details afterwards. So as I said, really the point of this presentation is to take the work we've done and use it as a case study to set an example for others who are thinking about maybe starting an IX. Those of us who started IX Denver, it was a kind of a happy hour conversation for probably 4 or 5, 6 years where we talked about doing it, we thought it was a good idea, we hashed it out, and then we never did anything about it. And finally when we did something about it, we found out that it was, there's definitely difficulties, but not super hard, and I think that others who are similarly passionate about the internet space and about interconnection can do the same thing and really kind of follow behind and then hopefully, like I said, take some of our lessons learned. So we're really looking to provide a template and then hopefully some inspiration as well. So why start IX Denver in particular? Well, first of all, I think more generally, I think IXPs are really the kind of, the linchpins, the focal points of the internet, right? I mean, this is where networks become the internetwork. It's how the internet really functions is through these internet exchanges in large part, right? There's obviously also transit connections and other ways to interconnect, but I think IXs form a really part of the resilient fabric of the internet. And so, the more they are, the better we are, probably. And especially having open, transparent, kind of community-run, cooperative-based, member-owned IXs, I think gives a really good alternative to any commercial options, especially as we're talking about redundancy and resiliency and the robustness of the overall internet. And specifically, being from Denver, born and raised, and growing up there and kind of watching everything happen there, there's a ton of fiber that goes through Denver, but not a whole lot of IP interconnectivity for some reason. It seems like a geographic hub to the US. It seems fairly centrally located, so if you're looking at like latencies to anywhere else in the country, it seems like a great spot to maybe have content and have connections. Again, I said like there's a ton of fiber that goes through there. There's a bunch of universities, there's tech offices, there's new startups. It's really a growing city. The 19th largest metro in the US right now. So it seemed like a place where there should be, more than just one exchange, and there really should be, again, a cooperative exchange, an open exchange that kind of follows the new model. And that's kind of the general reasons of why we started an IX and why I did it in Denver. Obviously, there's, volunteers behind this. So what were we trying to do? I think, part of this is making a difference, to give back. Obviously, our careers, whatever success we've seen has been because of the internet. If it didn't exist, we wouldn't have the jobs we have that actually pay the bills that allow us to have a side project like building an IX. And so it's a little bit of giving back. Again, kind of a dream, like it wasn't something we had done before. None of us had, at least of the original 4 members, had started an IX. We were smart enough to find somebody who had and bring them on as well to help out. So we learn about this and then, maybe even to be remembered, right? I think that's everybody's goal. And again, it comes back to a passion, right? It was something we really wanted to do. We were interested in providing value and this was a way to make it happen. So what did we write down? The mission statement is to provide open, neutral, community-oriented, and membership-based interconnection exchange points. And I think a lot of those words are really important, right? The open, the neutral, the community-oriented, membership-based. I think that's really the fundamentals for a solid nonprofit IX. And our vision is a little bit bigger than that, to constantly improve interconnectivity across the internet community. So, obviously our vision is a little bit bigger than just a single switch somewhere. I think we'll get into some of that here. The way we're doing this is as a nonprofit. We're going to be community-oriented. We're kind of following the OpenIX or EuroIX, or there's a lot of models out there that have talked about this kind of more interconnection, more places, small IXs in lots of places to kind of as a additional fabric. Really focusing on keeping the costs as low as possible. Just like Jared was talking about earlier with the 6, right? I mean, they know MRC. We're doing an MRC model, but we're trying to keep it as low as possible just to cover operating costs and be able to expand as we want to. Always a non-block switching fabric, right? A really simple switching that allows full line rate transmission. And then of course, because we're membership based, the idea was to reevaluate port costs on an annual basis, make sure that the members are actually having a say in what they're paying and are agreeing to the pricing. And then I think, really bringing together expert level, well-connected operators is a really big part of this, right? I think when you're starting a nonprofit IX, the community and the people that are involved in it is really the most crucial piece of this. And having some folks who, at least know what they're doing from a very, technical level, as well as kind of a business level, is really important. So that group of people that starts the IX is pretty important. There is another IX already in Denver called NE2Den. So this was the Rocky Mountain Internet Exchange, RMIX before in the Confluent space, and then CoreSite's taken that over, and now it's the CoreSite NE2Den IX. And so, there was an initial gut check of, well, there's already an IX in Denver. Do we actually need to start an open, neutral, transparent one? And I think we do, right? I think there is such a thing as too many IXs. If you look at like the number of internet exchanges that are in New York City, say, that might be slightly overdone. But Denver, I think, too, is probably not too many, right? Like 9, 10, 11, you're probably being, crazy, but 2 seems like not too big of a number. This adds resiliency, right? We're kind of backing each other up. So it's really not a competition, it's really a co-opetition. It's really something where, if folks want to peer at both, then they have, more redundancy, more resiliency, those peers are more secure. And again, we're taking kind of a different approach, right? We're neutral, both carrier and facility, so you don't have to be anywhere, you don't have to buy anything other than just the membership for the port. And then really community focused and member driven. So we're going to see how we can do this, as a community with our members together to maybe innovate in a different path than a commercial IX would. So as I said, I think community was like really the big piece here. The first step was getting a team together, inspiring others to join us, getting the board of directors together. What we did as a board of directors is we all put in a few $100s only as a zero interest loan to the organization to get it going. And that was enough, especially with all the donations and things we've received since then to get it going. But it was really about that team to begin it. And then beyond the team of folks that became the board that are kind of running the IX and started it, more than that, right, there's friendly help out in the industry, and that's been crucial. So Packet Clearinghouse has been a big help. Other IXs and then donations from our patrons have all made this happen, and that's all because of this really great community that we're hopefully helping to give back to. And then again, it's really kind of a measured approach, right? We're doing one step at a time, the crawl, walk, run, not shooting for the moon right away, just kind of getting it going and moving forward. So this is a list of the board of directors. So it's Mark Calkins, myself, Jay Henke, Ogi Mitev, and Ryan Prevet. Have all put in their own time and effort and some money to get this thing going. And then on the other side, 910 Telecom is the owner of the space we're in. They gave us free space and power. GDT gave us free fiber and patch panel. Juniper Networks and Myriad Supply together gave us the switch we're using. NWAX and PCH gave us a lot of help and kind of feedback along the way, as well as we kind of copied a lot of things from the 6 and their documentation that's out there, and then a bunch of other open IXs that are already come before us. When we were deciding where to put the IX, it was actually pretty clear in Denver. 910 Telecom is the old gas and electric building. It's the building where there's a ton of fiber. There's really just, this is the place in Denver where a bunch of the fiber comes through, so it just made sense to have at least the first node of the IX in that facility, which was interesting, right, because the folks who run 910 Telecom didn't really know what an IX was, so we had to approach them and kind of show them that we would be valuable and why that would make sense, and so that was part of the process that I think, don't be afraid to do that, to like kind of put your neck out there a little bit and explain the value, because I think we are, as once we got into it and once they understood what we were doing, they were really willing to help and have been great since then. But again, it was a lot of education of what an IX is, why that might be valuable to have in their space, why they might want to give us free space and power, all that. And then, and we're actually in the MMR in the Meet Me room, so pretty cool in the facility-owned Meet Me room. Also, this building is just kind of amazing. So I put another picture in there. It's a really cool building. If you've ever driven through Denver at dusk, it's pretty awesome. So, basically an IX is just a switch, right? You're just kind of passing packets back and forth so people can do their BGP peering. It ends up being a little bit more than that. Obviously, this rack drawing is pretty sparse, so it's not a whole lot more than just a switch. There's some servers, and we actually, these were servers that were kind of being thrown away. We picked up and put a hypervisor on and then run some VMs to do things, like route servers and the portal itself and some other things. We also wanted to give ourselves out-of-band access, so we got a 4G plan and put a little 4G out-of-band router in there, and then like all the cabling and stuff, like I said, the panels and fiber was all donated luckily, space and power was luckily donated, the Juniper was donated, so this stuff all came to us pretty much at zero cost, other than maybe, like I said, $100 for the out-of-band router, and then we're paying a little bit for the data plan on the 4G, but pretty minimal, pretty simple. There's a little bit more, right? There's also software. So again, we have a website put up so that you can like go see what the traffic levels are and see who's members and see how to contact us and all that stuff. We also put up some social media sites and use a Slack channel for communication. All this stuff's pretty basic, but things to do when you're starting up. The route server's Bird. IXP Manager gives us the MRTG graphs and some other cool stuff. It's great software. We're using Nagios that then fires back into Slack. So simple operation stuff. Using Google Docs, some financial software, some email lists, which we're still kind of figuring out. But I guess, the things you would think of, as long as you make the list of these things, but slightly more than just a switch. IPs, pretty simple. We went to Aaron and got our IPs. We have a 4-byte ASN, which is interesting. So we're running bird.1.6.3, which has the support for large communities. So we can do stuff with the route server. So that's pretty cool. I don't know who else is running that in production yet, but we're kind of happy to do that. And we had to, right, because we had a big AS. IPv4, this was definitely a lesson learned. We got a /24, and we're only at 20 members now, so we're not hitting scaling problems yet. But now that we're counting out, we're okay, wait, that really limits the number of members we can have on a single bit of space. So probably would have been better to ask for 23. Now if we want to go back and do that, we need to pay Aaron again and swap addresses, and definitely something that I would recommend. Go for as much space as you can get initially. IPv6, obviously we have plenty compared to the v4. What we're doing with the IPv6 addresses is we're actually just using the same basically a visually identical host ID. So the IPv6 addresses aren't going in order because we're following decimal from IPv4. So if they're 206.53.175.10 on the v4, we just do : 10 on the v6. Even though it's not actually numerically relevant, it makes sense. You can see which members are on which ports. It's kind of simple. Structure, right? So also beyond the switch and beyond all those little tools you have, there's also an organization behind this whole thing. You have to be able to handle money and that kind of stuff. So we basically borrowed the bylaws. We copied the bylaws from SIX and NWACS and just kind of hacked those two together and then made little changes here where we thought there should be changes. We're a Colorado nonprofit corporation. We have a bank account. We're filing taxes on a W-9. We have insurance in case something blows up or something. Really, mostly liability insurance, so we don't, the switch explodes and hurts someone else, we're covered. Which is also required to be in the data center, so little things like that. And right now, we're not a federal nonprofit. We don't have the 501c status. And we've kind of been debating between a 501c6 and a 501c12. I think as far as legal elegance goes, the C12, which is a cooperation, a co-op, makes a lot more sense, where the members actually own the IX, but it's a pain paperwork-wise. It's a lot more paperwork. It's a little bit harder to get through. There's precedent set for other IXs to be 501c6s, so we're probably gonna end up going down that road just because it's more well-worn and probably a little bit easier. And I'm not sure that the difficulty of the C12 makes a lot of sense. Also, some government agencies can't join co-ops because they're not allowed to own the telco kind of an IX thing. So there may be some restrictions there. So I think, like I said, we're gonna go 501c6 in that debate. And then the biggest thing, I think, with an IX, right, this chicken and egg problem is really the crux of the matter, right? So obviously, the value of an IX is to interconnect with other networks. If you're the first network to join an IX, you can't interconnect with anyone, so there's really zero value. So that's really the hardest part, I think, of bootstrapping a IX is getting members on board initially, because there is really no value for the first few members. And I don't know what that number is, where you really are kind of past the hump. I don't think we're quite there yet with 20 members even. But definitely the first couple is really they just have to want to help your IX grow. It really has to be kind of a community benefit thing for them to do. So we waived fees. We're lucky that we have a lot of friends in the industry that kind of see the value and help out. Those community connections are key. I think as you're building your board, that's something that probably matters. You probably want somebody on your board who goes to the local NOG and then know some people who you can call and ask for favors. That's really what it comes down to at the beginning. Folks have to have a little bit of vision and see the value. So these are the 10 folks that joined right away. These are, we call them our founding members, the first 10. And so really big thanks to all of them, and even the 10 more that have joined since then, because that's really, obviously, the whole value of the IX is in having members. So the fact that folks put their faith in us to join the IX and start passing some bits across it, really awesome. Surprises. So, as I've talked to folks, these may be a little rare. So transit, at least in the 910 Telecom Meet Me room, there wasn't really an option. They don't do like a blended bandwidth thing. They don't really sell transit. It's just space and power. It's like a pure colo. And so it was actually fairly difficult for us with very little money to find transit inside of the data center, which seems like an odd problem, and maybe it was. It might have been just kind of a one-off for us. I've talked to other folks who didn't have this problem, so it was surprising, but maybe not something to learn from too widely. Obviously, also being really poor as an organization and not having any income coming in at the beginning and having like most things donated, it was odd that really our ARIN registration fees ended up being like the biggest expense we've ever paid. So it was $500 for V6, $500 for V4, $500 for an ASN, which isn't like, it's not real money, right? It's not that much money for most companies. But as a nonprofit with nothing in the bank, it was the biggest expense, right? And then paying like the $500 a year after that still is our biggest expense right now. Hopefully we'll have other expenses that surpass that soon, but something to pay attention to. Another thing was we were really thought that we had to like go find the content providers to come join. Like that was kind of our focus at first. And it turned out that was pretty easy. Like a lot of the content guys like understand what peering is and does, and they're on board and they want to join. So a lot of our early members were actually content folks. And it turns out that the local ISPs and eyeball networks were actually the folks that we need to find because they're not necessarily, the local guys aren't maybe not doing peering and aren't really big in these forums, right? They're not here. And so they don't maybe know. And so finding them is harder and bringing them on board is harder. And so that was kind of a flip for us. Like we thought we had to go after content really hard, and what it turns out is finding the small like eyeballs that are unique ASNs in Colorado is really gonna be the benefit. What else here? Oh, one thing, our power feeds weren't actually redundant. We had an A and a B feed. We plugged into both of them, and we had a power outage. We were really surprised. So just little things, right? It's all the basics, just like anything else. I mean, if you're doing operations otherwise, you probably know a lot of these gotchas and these things, but it was a fun little problem. And then of course, when the power went out, we had a VM on a server that was supposed to be attached to a subnet that we had removed, so it wouldn't boot. So we had to physically go down to the data center when the power came back on to actually get the route server back up. Kind of a pain, just little things, right? Normal operational stuff, which is sometimes overlooked when you're doing a volunteer thing and you have to go back and forth. So documentation becomes really crucial as well. So that's just passing bits, right? And then the question is, can we do more? Interconnection is great, but what else can we do with this, organization as we gain members and as we go forward? I think, lowering the barrier for entry for new peering networks is a really big one. I think that's obviously a core tenet of what we're doing. But we'd really like this to be a platform for innovation already, right? It's member driven, so we hope that we have members that come in with fresh ideas and want to vote on new stuff and like try things out with us. One of the things we've done is, thanks to Job Snijders, he introduced us to a guy named Pierre Chiolo, I think. There's a server, a script called a route server. It's just a route as one word, and then server. It's on GitHub. You can find it, and it basically uses our members' peering DB data and IRDB data to create a config for our route server that filters everything based down to what they're publishing is actually their routes. So it makes it up really, really tight. We've already caught a couple of members who were like about to try to advertise their ISP space to us, and we blocked it. Got a bunch of syslog messages, so it's successful. It's been working. It's really cool. And what we're actually doing with that is more than just actually filtering routes that come into the route server. We're also trying to encourage good behavior in the industry. So we actually have 3 route servers set up. 2 of them are redundant to each other, and they're the ones that are actually using this A route server script to be configured. The other one is non-redundant and just has prefix limits on it. So if you don't have a internet registry record and you don't have a peering DB record, if you don't have those things so we can't pull the information automatically and create this script, then you get put on the non-redundant route server with just prefix limits. And if you actually do the things that we think are the best behavior for a peering organization to register your routes and registry of peering DB, then you get the redundant route servers. So we're hoping to promote some good behavior there. And then obviously also publishing and presenting things. The reason I'm here today is to kind of share this story and get out there. So those are some of the things we can do more. What else, right? Educating new members. So one of the things we're really passionate about is finding companies in Colorado and then the surrounding area that have an ASN but don't do any peering at all, and find out why, and maybe there's some value in peering for them. There's a lot of reasons why you might want to peer, and potentially that goes beyond just web scale companies and ISPs, right? This could go to enterprises and things. I think our passion is to maybe help spread that and grow that. Finding other leverage, right? So that route server policy I think is kind of a cool way to nudge our members to get into peering DB and then register their routes. What else can we do like that? And then obviously all this community that helped us create this whole thing, does that go further? Is there room for a Denver NOG or something like that? These are other ideas, right? We might want to get into. So how far have we come? Like I said, we're at 20 members. Our peak traffic ever was 5.6 gigs, so still really tiny compared to most of the other IXs you probably are going to hear presentations from ever. Our peak yesterday was 4.4 gigs, so pretty tiny, but we're super happy for being a year old and just kind of getting this thing off the ground and having 20 members and hitting over 5 gigs of traffic. Another thing that kind of also relates back to some of the things that was said about the 6 is we're already doing an extension switch. So we've got an extension switch actually at MICE, at the Minnesota Internet Exchange, or Interconnection Exchange. And so Neutral Path Networks is basically running a wave for us back there. So we've got a connection back. And what's happening is folks that are at the MICE are actually also peering at IX Denver, which I was a little, I'm a little wary of doing like the cross-country peering stuff. But what happens is they're using it as a backup. So when something happens at MICE and peering stuff goes down, we see a boost in traffic at IX Denver, and then it usually like rolls right back. So I think it's pretty beneficial. I think it's cool. We're talking to other IXs now to kind of see if that model works in other places where, it's not necessarily a geographical stretch. It's more of just you're pairing with these people in more locations and build some resiliency in. I don't know. We also had our first event on the 5th of December, 2016, at a place called the Corner Office. It's a really cool bar right across the street from 910 Telecom, so it made sense. And it was a really cool event, I think. Bringing the community together, it was not necessarily, peering related, but it was also, just network related. It was a good event. And I think having some fun with this is crucial, right? I mean, the whole idea of a community IX is a community. They're required to make this thing work, and it's also good to buy them some beers every now and then. The traffic graph is a week or two old now. You can see we've definitely had some steps there, and now we're sustaining around the 4.5 gig mark. What are our plans for the future? So we want to do more facilities. We kind of want to bring low-cost, easy peering to you and not force people to have to come to us. That's our thought right now anyway. I know there's definitely some debate in the industry as far as whether a single switch in a single location with a few members is better than a regional fabric. I don't know. I think us going out to those folks, especially in Denver where it's a lot of spread out, that's our plan in order to get more members, which really is the way to bring value for all the other members that are already there. More community, more events. We're going to do 2 members meetings this year, along with kind of another one of those peering socials. We're going to do elections this year, so we're going to kind of start cycling through the board and do succession planning, make sure the organization actually has a life beyond just the 5 folks who started it. Probably start looking into federal status. If we actually start having folks who see value enough to be paying us so that we have income that is over the limit where we need to file, we will. Maybe build more of a robust member portal. We're looking at some automation things and some easy ways to kind of have members be able to do cool stuff. And then adding some root DNS servers as well. That's in progress right now. So that's kind of all the things going up next. I think some of the key takeaways is that this can be done, right? This is actually not as hard as it may, not as daunting as it may be once you dig into it. And as long as you've got a good support team, I think help's out there. If you're willing to ask for help and willing to go to the mailing list and go to the forums and ask people or go to your friends, as long as you have the right team, right? It's really about bringing that initial board together and then being tied into the grander community. And I think those 2 things are really tied together and helpful. One of the biggest things, I think, the biggest takeaway, if you have anything from this talk and you thought about IXs from the outside before, the technology is really the easy part. That community building and bringing people together is, I think, the harder part. It doesn't have to cost a fortune. We did this on a shoestring budget, and it's been super successful in my viewpoint. And then, like I said, the eyeballs drive traffic, which is kind of a duh, but like I said, just in our experience, finding those local eyeballs was way more important than finding the content. The content will just kind of flow once that happens. So, now it's your turn to either come peer at IX Denver or start a local IX. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions anybody has. We've got a couple minutes.
Matt Pitak, Yahoo, early member of IX Denver. Thank you, Chris. One quick question for you. Can you clarify a little bit how you do the sort of primary routing versus backup routing between you and MICE? I'm a little unclear how you finagle that or set that up.
Right, so it's not like the 2 IXs are not interconnected. There is basically an extension switch near the MICE facility, right? So if you're at MICE, you can also plug into a switch that is connected to IX Denver.
Okay, so the participants have 2 different BGP sessions.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. I was thinking you were doing some really interesting tricks in the middle.
Nope, not too cool yet. Just simple stuff.
Got it, thank you.
Yep. I think Joe?
Joe Bravo, Google. Thanks, Chris. Cool presentation. One question or suggestion for an avenue for future experimentation, since you talked about doing experiments with route servers. Have you thought of doing an RPKI enforcement route server?
That has not crossed our mind yet. I'd be happy to talk to you about it. I don't know how feasible that is, but if it's something that we could actually do, we'd love to try it. One thing we have thought about, that's a little bit off tangent from that we also didn't end up going forward with is multicast exchange, but we tried to find some interest and there didn't seem to be any really, so if somebody's interested in that, come talk to me too, either for or against. If there's not any other questions, I'll get out of your way. Thanks.